Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your host Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. We're extending the Lonely Hearts Club a bit into March because it's a leap year, and not because Alejandro is behind on editing. Tonight's topic is the charming film Lars and the Real Girl. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, spread some love, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead.
Welcome back, lovers, to our second out of two examinations of a couple of damaged daddies.
Oh my god, jeez. I did like the Taylor Swift reference, though, you dropped in the beginning.
Oh, so I was doing that's a good point. Yeah, Lover from her album. I was actually just like, as if it was like Losers, but Lovers. It was technically an It reference.
But it worked out. It works out for both of us.
It dips its toes and fingers into a couple of different things. But welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
To the second, movie review / commentary on film for the year. We've got an interesting show, especially the mini topic.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So before anything else, let's just get into, what are you drinking, T?
Okay, so with our movie today, I was trying to find something. I tried some different keywords to find a topic. I couldn't really find something, so I defaulted, since this is, the Lonely Hearts Club. We talk about love, and actually, I think it's perfect for this. And I'll tell you why for a couple reasons later in the episode. But I went with my go-to Valentine's cocktail, which is Love Potion number 9. It's vodka with Chambord and pomegranate juice.
Ooh, very nice. Very pink in color, I'm guessing.
And classy, because we're classy bitches.
Yes, we are.
What are you drinking?
So the last episode, anyone who listened will already know, I was dumb and I decided to get my drink before watching the movie. I should have been drinking scotch because that's what Arthur was drinking. So I decided to wait until literally a few hours ago. Not a few. So this morning, after I left the gym, I needed to get gas, so I stopped at 7-Eleven, and I'm like, whatever. What would go well with this movie is at the dinner party, Lars and Bianca bring, a bottle of wine, and then when asked if he wants a drink, Lars just says, "Oh, I'll have one beer." So I'm like, okay, beer or wine would work. So at the 7-Eleven, I'm like looking for a beer, something. At first I was like, oh, Canadian beer because of where this was shot. But as I'm looking, I find the best possible beer. I have remarked, anyone who is a fan of the show might know, I've remarked before that I am not an IPA fan when it comes to beer. I know that makes me a beta male to beer people.
I mean, but, I'm always calling you beta.
Right? Andrew Tate would have my balls in a vice. But, it sucks because the thing is with IPAs, they always have the coolest names. I wish I was an IPA fan, not just because beer culture loves it, but they always have the coolest names. And so, very appropriate for this movie, I found an IPA by Dust Bowl Brewing Company called Therapist No Appointment Necessary Imperial IPA. Genius.
Oh my god, that's perfect.
So if anyone thinks that's funny, I found it at 7-Eleven. I'm sure you could probably find it at Bevmo, Costco, whatever. I think it's hilarious. $8 for it, so a little overpriced, but it's tall boy, and it's 10.4 alcohol by volume. So definitely getting my money's worth. We might be getting silly for this episode, so at least I'm very appropriate for the movie that we're talking about. But before the movie, last episode, we kind of went off on a couple of different things, but I briefly mentioned a film that I had heard in some news thing I was watching was getting some backlash, called Miller's Girl. And partly because movie news has been slow. The last week it was mostly like Super Bowl stuff. I don't think there's really been any big movie news, at least about movies. There's probably been something about celebrities or whatever, but I'm like, let's look into this, because I think it's kind of worth talking about, like, with outrage on things. Like, is it warranted? What is it even about? And in my research, I've got a bit of a hot take, a bit of a conspiracy theory, but one of the fun ones.
I'm intrigued.
Not one of the Satan is brainwashing us all kind of conspiracy theories. So, like, just to recap, Miller's Girl is a movie that I think it's out by now, but it's about a relationship between a college professor and an 18-year-old freshman student, and there's a 31-year-old age gap. And Jenna Ortega is one of the characters, and then Martin Freeman, who people would know from Sherlock or The Hobbit or The British Office,
or Love
professor.
Actually.
Love Actually. He's been in tons of stuff, but Martin Freeman's the professor, and so my first question is there any, like, what's the backlash? What's the backlash about? Is it warranted compared to, like, other movies? So pretty much one thing that I found is it's like non-news. So even today, as cringy as it is with internet drama, they'll have, like, pictures of tweets or something. So pretty much, like, the thing I kept hearing is like, oh, the age gap is gross. Okay, who said that? No Twitter screenshots, no, saying names of people. It's just kind of just vague criticism about a fictional relationship. The other thing that was parroted a lot is that the intimacy coach for the film, Christina Argena, I think usually my handwriting is great, but I think that's her name. So she was defending the film, saying, like, Jenna, all of her boundaries were fine, like, they never crossed anything. She had, she could say if there was anything that made her uncomfortable. There was a whole system in place besides hers, the intimacy coach, set in place, and also there's been no comment from Jenna Ortega or Martin Freeman, so it's
I think that's best, especially if you're saying if everything's just vague, like.
Yeah, so it just seems like this will get into my conspiracy theory I'll conclude with once we discuss this a little bit more. But one thing that I found a bit sus is that there doesn't really seem to be any verifiable outrage. It just is kind of all these articles. I read a few of them, and it was all the same points. It was this is gross. It was the intimacy coach, all of the quotes about her talking about all of the systems in place to keep Jenna from feeling uncomfortable. And it was just the same article over and over again from different publications. So the first point of discussion I think is worth talking about is intimacy coaches. Because I don't know if everyone who listens knows what that is. It's a fairly new thing. And I think it's kind of controversial depending on who you talk about. But basically, they are there to make sure that there is no shenanigans on set, let's say. And I think the people who think that that's dumb are kind of unaware of the history of sex scenes in movies. For the most part, there isn't, there's not, it's mostly like a couple of cases, but one, I'm going to see if you can guess what the first movie I want to talk about in regards to intimacy coaches being something that is not stupid, at least in my opinion. And I wonder if you can guess.
I'm assuming it's to be Last Tango in Paris.
Oh my god, it's like you read my mind.
That's like the most famous example of why we need them.
I've got like that in, it's more in the pornography sense, but Deep Throat is another one that, came out. It was a big hit, which is crazy that played in major theaters and was like technically a box office success despite being a porn. But that's another one. But I came up with kind of a flip of Last Tango in Paris with Blue Velvet. But Last Tango in Paris, for anyone who isn't aware, it is a repulsive movie, I think what makes it, and part of the reason I'm pairing it with Blue Velvet in talking about this subject is that, like, in Last Tango in Paris, you're more aware of it than me, but from my understanding, the film itself is, like, romantic, in quotation marks. Like, it's about, like, a steamy last affair, and it's not very sinister or anything. At least that's what it's going for. I don't know. You talk about it more. I've never seen it. So am I right in saying that it's kind of framed in a romantic way?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it is, yeah, it's a romance.
So that's kind of, and that's where some people might not be aware of why intimacy coaches are important, because here, if you were just a casual movie viewer, you probably would not think anything bad happened on the set of that movie. But in case you don't know, pretty much everything was non-consensual in that movie. There was full-on, like, sex. Like, it wasn't, like, acted out. It was, like, basically, sexual assaults that you are witnessing happen on film.
Yeah, it's the infamous butter scene where it's Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider. Essentially, he initiates anal sex on her. And this is according to what I'm reading on Quora, just to make sure I'm getting the facts right. And only Marlon Brando and the director Bernardo, insert generic Italian, knew that it was going to happen. They, like, decided this was going to happen, and they didn't tell her because they, quote, wanted an honest reaction. And I'm so tired of that being the excuse for people for doing stuff and doing, like, repulsive things, for whatever reason.
If it was like, there's, like, stories of things like that on set where, here's a great example of that not being a messed up thing to do. In Alien, one of my favorite films of all time, they did not tell anyone of the actors what was going to happen. They knew that the alien was going to appear, but they did not know about the chest bursting scene, and they did that so that they could get their honest reactions to that happening.
Yeah.
But no one died. No aliens popped out of anyone's chest for real. So that's like, that would be like a positive example, in my opinion, of that being okay.
Yeah,
and no
one
was hurt.
Yeah, it would be different if, like, somebody had said, I don't know, I saw something burst out as a child and it terrified me, and that's different. But that's, like, more of an on a basis. But when you're talking about sexual assault, there is no gray area for you to be like, this is okay. And the part that irritates me about this whole thing is that, of course, it's the two men who decided what was appropriate.
Yes.
It wasn't like Bert, whatever the hell that director's name is, and, Maria Schneider decided this and didn't tell Marlon Brando, which still wouldn't make it okay, but it's just so of the time that it was the two men deciding what they wanted to do. And so I refuse to acknowledge that movie as a work of art for that specific reason.
So the reason I brought it up is, as I said, again, I've never seen it, but I understood that kind of the framing of the movie was that it was very hot and sexy and romantic.
It was rated X when it came out.
Yeah, so anyone who is either unaware of that, or like, if you know someone who, is very vocal about thinking intimacy coaches are stupid, I would maybe bring that up, because I think what makes that particularly gross to me is that it, like, if, for instance, if it was a scene, like, I'm trying to remember the Jodie Foster movie where there's a sexual assault with, like, a pinball machine. Is it The Accused? Something like that? Whatever. But that is a pretty intense scene, but most likely, as far as I know, there wasn't anything on set. Precautions were taken to make sure that it wasn't, like, a traumatic scene to shoot.
Yeah.
But you would think that with a scene like that, it's kind of like finding out that, in the 50 Shades of Grey movie that, like, what's-her-face didn't consent to anything that was being done to her. And I think that's what makes that specifically gross, and also why a lot of dudes most likely probably don't realize that an intimacy coach is probably a good idea.
Well, you know what's interesting about the concept of intimacy coaches? You know, a lot of older stars, and I've so far only heard really commentary against them from male older stars. Like, you can tell they don't understand the point. They're like, oh, it messes up the chemistry, it does this, and it's like, well, of course, because you were the one that was never having anything done to you, and with the notable exception that I can think of being Deliverance. But you know,
which again, as far as I know, I don't think any of the dudes in that movie had it. Like, it's, as you said, it's always men who seem to downplay it, and ideally sex scenes in movies should not be traumatic to film, you know, because it's not real. In the case of Last Tango in Paris, that was unfortunately not the case. But that's what, like, so I mentioned Blue Velvet. You and I have talked about this movie tons of times. We just reviewed a David Lynch film, but
Mulholland Drive. Yeah,
this is like the reverse, where that is a really disturbing, you know, again, sexual assault scene in a movie, to the point where Roger Ebert said that the movie was horrible, and oh my gosh, the trauma that the actress must have felt and stuff. But what's funny about that is, despite how disturbing that scene is, it was a good time. And, you know, frankly, intimacy coaches didn't exist at that time. I would think David Lynch would probably be open to the idea if he were doing it today. Thankfully, Dennis Hopper was just a fun guy, and, you know, in between takes, he would, like, crack jokes, and everyone was having a good time. Miss Rossellini was very open about the fact that she was very comfortable, and again, it's kind of funny when you see the movie, because you would think that it would be a really intense scene to film, but according to everybody, including the actress involved, it was like, basically Dennis Hopper, if he were still alive, he could be an intimacy coach.
Right. So, you know, this last year we had that, you know, just horrendously and poorly received series, The Idol, which The Weeknd is still not over, the fact that no one liked it. But in one of the early episodes, because I love drama. So I would watch drama channels they'd watch an episode and tell me how awful the episode was, because I was not going to watch that, but I was just curious to see how it was going to do. So I guess in one of the early episodes, the episode kind of takes the stand that intimacy coaches are bad. There's, from what I remember, and again, don't quote me on this, this is all secondhand, but the plot basically was, whoever the main celebrity is, she wanted to do a photo shoot for her album or something, but she wanted to be nude in it. And the intimacy coordinator who was there said, no, we can't do that because there's certain precautions you have to take. We're not prepared for that, whatever. And she was like, well, I don't care. It's for me. And so they end up locking the intimacy coordinator in in some closet somewhere, basically framing it as, you know, the intimacy coordinator is stifling her sexuality. And people were just like, that was such a wrong message to put out there. Because again, it's not just about what's comfortable for her. She could become, that's fine. Everybody else has to be comfortable. Certain precautions have to be taken, all this other stuff. And the fact that the episode kind of glosses over that really rubbed people the wrong way. And I remember a lot of people complaining about that, but it's like, even today with modern, you know, storytelling and stuff. And what's ironic, there probably was an intimacy coordinator on set. Imagine like being the intimacy coordinator on set for that scene where they're basically telling you that your job is creatively stifling. Which is kind of what a lot of these, you know, older male stars say. You know, they said, oh, we used to just go and we'd be passionate and go at it and we get these great takes. Okay, and why you can't be passionate with like boundaries? Is that what you're saying? Anyway, yeah. but yeah. So that's one. I'm so glad intimacy coordinators are a thing now, because you know, it's when people, and again, I'm going back to Last Tango in Paris. I know there are most likely more. I'm just not versed in all of them, and I know that sounds bad, but I should be versed in them if I'm going to talk about it, but the last thing in Paris scene, the fact that two people in a three-person scene were able to decide what was going to happen to one of the other people without their knowledge or consent is an incredibly disturbing thing. Like, I'm sorry, that's like an episode of Law and Order SVU waiting to happen, and it's just horrifying to me. And again, that's why I said, because of that scene, I do not acknowledge that movie as a piece of art. I acknowledge it as a recording of a crime.
Yes, so obviously I've already made it clear. I think they're needed. I think ideally,
I'll get off my soapbox.
In a perfect world, they would be something you would only hire for a scene in which it's, you know, a sexual assault or something. If
Right.
you can afford them and the scene is like, I think if you can afford them, they should just be on set. And if you are like an independent movie, you should probably spring for them if it's like more dark subject matter. So
Right.
the next thing so going back to like, you know, and that too, as I said before, if you don't know what an intimacy coach is until listening to this show, or if you're someone who has had trouble explaining why they are useful, maybe, you know, this is all good stuff to bring up. But so that it covers, in case anyone doesn't know what an intimacy coach is. The other thing that came up with this movie that I was thinking of is a current Oscar nomination has kind of a similar but more offensive age gap. I think it's Natalie Portman is nominated for Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress for May, December.
Yeah, May, December, yeah.
So I had... It's funny, I saw it in the nominations weeks ago, and then someone brought up what it was about, because I didn't know what it was about, and I was like, that's kind of messed up. And the person I was talking to, I don't think had seen it, because they seemed to think that it was like a romance or something. So that was like sticking in my mind, because I was thinking, that's kind of weird that this new movie would get a lot of, you know, backlash, and that movie is nominated for an Oscar. So I did the full 9 yards, T. I started off by just looking up what the story was. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, May December is about an actress played by Natalie Portman who is doing research because she's going to be playing a woman who had an affair with a 13-year-old boy. And it was like a big criminal thing that like blew up and was in the tabloids and everything. It's Julianne Moore, and I think Charles Melton is the guy who plays her husband. But so in the story, she was 36 when he was 13, and then she was she got pregnant by him and gave birth in prison, and then when they got out and he was of age, they got married, and they're living in Savannah, Georgia. And I was just thinking, so my first thought was like, okay, it seems to be people are upset about the sex scenes in Miller's Girl. So
Yeah.
Is there a sex scene between Julianne Moore and a 13-year-old boy? And when I was looking it up, it was talking about, I just looked at a synopsis, and it was talking about where they had sex and stuff, and basically, I didn't get the answer I wanted, because I wanted to know, is there a sex scene between an older woman and a 13-year-old boy? So I went the full 9 yards, and last night, when I was doing my research, I found out it was on Netflix, so I went ahead and watched the movie. And no. And also, no, the movie is not glorifying this. It's actually very, very open about how messed up it is. I do think that it also touches on the double standard of how when women do it, it's not really as frowned upon as when men do it. It's a good movie, genuinely. Is it good enough to change my opinion on my Oscar predictions? No. But it is really good. I think it's like Spotlight in the sense where like everything is good, but I think what stands out is the subject matter more than anything. I think all the acting was really good. 3 out of 4 in my opinion for a mini review. But so that was kind of nipping in the bud my double standard thing, because going back to Miller's Girl and the reviews that are on Rotten Tomatoes, first off, it has got a 31% as of when I last checked. Nobody thinks it's good. Some of the people have said that it's boring, which is the worst thing you can be if you're trying to be pushing the envelope. So then I was like, okay, what is the crux of the issue? And I think the problem, well, and again, I'll get to my conspiracy theory, but if there is a problem, I think the problem is that it is a romance, like a, you know, the way what I wrote down here. I don't really read romance novels. It's not my genre. It's not something I'm into. But one thing
you are missing out.
Well, so you read probably more romance novels than I do, and so the term I wrote down to kind of explain what I've noticed with like women I've dated and stuff is there is a big market for what I'll call forbidden fruit.
Yes.
Things that would be canceled, you know, relationships with slaves, relationships with big age gaps, things that are, on a broad sense, very offensive. Even going back to 50 Shades of Grey, it was kind of, a controversial film in that women were getting off to a dude who was ignoring their boundaries, and I think it kind of confused men because it's like, this is everything you tell us is wrong with us, and yet this is the best-selling book ever. And I don't think that's necessarily...
Right now there's a popular romance called Priest, and it's about a priest and a woman having an affair. Like you said, forbidden
Exactly.
fruit.
No, and that's another example.
And that's a very steamy book.
And I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with that, because again, you could we could do a deep dive into tons of romance novels. There would be things that, people on Twitter would just be appalled that like people are getting off to. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think in this case, that is what they were going for. This was supposed to be like, a forbidden fruit romance that was supposed to have like steamy sex scenes, and at the end of the day, it's just a bad movie. The sex scenes are not steamy, the plot is boring, and it's a recent L from Jenna Ortega. But on to my conspiracy theory, because as I said when I started talking about my research into the backlash, who are these people? Like, it almost seemed kind of like, it seemed like it was like questioning people after a test screening or something. There were just like disembodied quotes from who knows. So my conspiracy theory is that there was no backlash. I think this was manufactured to try and get some buzz for a bad movie. I think the test screening went poorly. People said it sucked. People said it was boring. And they took a couple of offhanded quotes about it being gross and the age gap being problematic. Mm-hmm. And they did what is called outrage marketing, where they report on it and they get people mad, because some people will be outraged about the age gap, and then there will be people who will react the way I kind of react right now, where I'm like, it's not real, you need to calm down. And everyone forgets that about the content of the movie, and it's just a way, like, this thing's gonna piddle out, no one's gonna see this movie, but if we make people upset, they will go and see if this movie is as gross as people are saying it is. So that's like,
that reminds me of, like, remember when Joker came out, and at first I don't think they started out with outrage marketing, but there were people that were like, yeah, this is just like an incel-y movie, like incel. But that was a word that was used all the time. It was like an incel manifest, all this weird stuff. And then all of a sudden everything got weird. And then I remember people were saying stuff like, oh, there's concern that violence will break out in the theaters during the screenings. And I'm just like, no one ever said that. Where did that come from? So it was almost like they took the outrage over it being sort of like an incel manifesto and kind of manufactured this whole thing around it, and then it got people.
That was definitely a thing. There was I heard, and who knows if this was true. I remember some theaters saying they were gonna like have armed guards. Part of it was also the Aurora, Colorado incident from years ago. Because they were thinking, oh, if there's any, people with screws loose, they might try and do kind of a copycat sort of thing. But no, I completely agree. I think that was part of the marketing for that movie as well. Even though it's a Batman adjacent movie, it's going to make a lot of money, even if it's
I mean,
awful.
I still think it's an incel manifesto, but it was not
Well,
warranted with people thinking that people were going to start like fist fighting in the middle of a theater or something. It was, I have no idea what that
I know
was.
what you mean. No, like yeah. But what do you think, T? Do you think I might be onto something, or do you think there were people who were actually outraged? What do you think about people who feel that way? Like that if something is gross in a movie, that means the movie is like co-signing it. Do you have any opinions on any of that?
So I have opinions on all of that. So first off, the fact that I really hadn't even heard of this movie until this stuff popped up about people being appalled by it, tells me right away, yeah, this is probably outrage marketing. I kind of agree with you there. Like you said, it sounds like from the test screening, it was a blah movie and they want to try to get, as much money back as they can. So they're now going to run with maybe these few offhand comments. It was probably like, movie was boring, not a lot interesting, thought the age gap was gross, like that was like an afterthought. That wasn't even the main thing.
Exactly.
And then they run with that and make it, try to, but it's weird because they're trying to make it seem like it's organic discussion, and it's not, because guess what? No one heard of this movie until this outrage started out about this. So that's where I think. As far as your second point of just because something's gross in a movie does it means the movie's like co-signing is like signing off on it. I personally think it depends on how it's framed.
For sure.
With the fact that, and age gaps are always weird for me because how much, like, I don't, if there are age gaps between adults, I don't think it's gross. I think it's like, what do you have in common? Like, it's like, is it gonna last? To me, that's more what I think. Now, if if there's obviously predatory behavior on one side or the other, that changes that, But if it's just like people getting fireworks for somebody that's older than them, as long as they're of consensual age, it's like I don't think that that's gross. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't think that's gross. I just think it's like, how long is the relationship gonna last? Because how much do you really have in common? That's kind of
For
more the thing
sure.
I'm gonna say. As far as presenting them, like you said, as far as framing goes, um, I do think that if a movie presents something and it's not like supposed to be like a movie that's like dystopian or something like that, it presents something as normal or not up for discussion, or for the good guys or something like that. I do think it can it can, whether or not that's the intention, it can come across as signing off on something that's controversial. To me, in this case, with it sounding like it's just a romance between an older guy and a younger woman, and like I said, I haven't seen it, you haven't seen it, unless he's being predatory or she's being predatory. It's like, what
I
what is
think
what is there to what is there to really to sign off on?
he is her college professor, but once
Okay, so there's
again,
the power imbalance.
there is a power imbalance. But again, I think that is just kind of that quote unquote problematic forbidden fruit romance novel sort of thing, because
Yeah.
that is a kink people have. Like there is a whole chunk of the internet that's like hot for teacher. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? There was like a whole Tumblr thing with like, teenage girls like thirsting after their tea. It's a thing. It's gross and it sucks. And thankfully, teachers who are good people are not going to act on it. But when it's college, it's like it's more unethical than
Yeah.
illegal. Because she could be getting a good grade because she's sleeping with her teacher. But again, that's the thing that really annoys me. If anyone is like trying to defend Jenna Ortega or her character in this fictional film, is again, she's 18. Like, it can be as gross as you want it to be, but why are you acting like she's like a little girl?
Yeah.
It's weird. I do get it. It is
It
gross
basically
and
just sounds like American Psycho too. Like, I don't know,
right.
that was, did you ever see that? That was like a
I
really,
haven't. I'm aware of it, but I haven't
but
seen it.
it's like some woman, I think I don't know. She like the reincarnation of space. She has the same tendencies as Patrick Bates or whatever his name
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so she has a romance with her professor, who she's a teacher's aide for. So she's a little bit older, but her teacher's aide is like William Shatner. It's played by William Shatner. I'm just like, okay, but it's like, and maybe that was okay in that context because it was a horror movie, which, by the way, it really is an American Psycho too. It's like they had the intellectual property name and they just slapped it on something else to sell it.
Oh, I know all about it. I know.
Uh,
It's one of those sequels where it's, oh, we can't sell this. Slap a title from a previous movie on it, and we'll try and trick people into seeing it.
I don't know. So I guess the real question boils down to is movie portrayals of the forbidden fruit sort of trope, is that problematic? I think is the bigger question here, because
I don't think it happens as much in movies. Like, as I said, I don't really read romance novels, but I've dated a few girls who really like them. And I'd just be kind of like, oh, what's it about? And they explain this plot, and I'm just like, that's kind of what? Like, what? And these aren't like, pretty normal ladies, and just different women. Like, it seems to be a thing. It's not a genre I really get into, but whenever I hear the plot synopsis of one of them, I'm just like, that's kind of wow, and movies do it a little bit. But I feel like partly because there are more eyes on it. Like, it's almost like the book audience is very insulated. So there's not as, and they kind of get that it's almost like a kink kind of thing. So there's not as much like outrage over any book that comes out.
Yeah.
But in movies, like, whenever, I'm sure if we went through like Lifetime or something, we could probably find some really weird
oh my
ideas
god,
for plots.
right?
But anywho, let's get on to the main course.
The main course.
So, in case someone clicked on us on accident or can't read or whatever, we will be talking about Lars and the Real Girl. And I've got a very, very special announcement, T.
Oh my god, are you pregnant?
I have a girlfriend, and she's here with me. Her name is Estefania, and she's a makeup artist from Croatia. Can you say hello, Estefania? Oh, we can't say that on air. You're crazy.
She's a bad girl. Oh,
She's
Estefania.
Oh, hopefully they get that reference. Yeah,
my favorite bit so far.
Yes. So, Lars and the Real Girl came out on November 2nd, 2007. It had a budget of $12 million and grossed only $11,293,663 worldwide. It is a bona fide bomb. Sadly, the director is Craig Gillespie, who has gone on to do quite a lot of stuff. Most recently, I do want to see this because it looked really good. I missed it at the tail end of last year, but he did Dumb Money last year. He did Cruella in 2021.
Loved Cruella.
He did I, Tonya in 2017. He did the Fright Night remake in 2011, which I probably wouldn't like. And his first film right before this came out was Mr. Woodcock in 2007. So the writer, Nancy Oliver, was nominated for Best Original Screenplay for this film. And interestingly, this is the only film she's written. She's done a lot of TV work. She's written multiple episodes for 6 Feet Under, 14 episodes, True Blood, 7 episodes, and most recently some miniseries called Angeline, which was 5 episodes. And I wonder if you can guess this, T. So this came out in 2007, so in the 2008 Oscars, without looking it up, do you know what this movie lost to?
Oh, let me see, 2008. I'm afraid I may get the year wrong, but
if you give up, just let me know.
Was it? Was this Slumdog year?
No.
Okay, then I have no idea.
So, well, in Slumdog, I don't think it might have won Best Adapted. I don't think it won Screenplay. It won Picture. So this This was up for Best Original Screenplay, and it lost to Juno, which was written by Diablo Cody, who just wrote Lisa Frankenstein. So fun, connection to that. So acting-wise, we've got Ryan Gosling as Lars Lindstrom, who is currently also nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Barbie. We've got Emily Mortimer as Karen. We've got Paul Schneider as Gus Lindstrom. We've got Kelly Gardner as Margot. We've got Patricia Clarkson as Dagmar, or the psychologist. We've got Sally Cahill as Deb, who was sort of the older lady, like, I don't like his tone, that lady. We've got Lilsa Repo Martel as Laurel, who was, I believe, that office crush. And there's a funny credit in this movie with Bianca being played by Bianca Wrangler, which is crazy because I could have sworn it was Scarlett Johansson.
Really? No, Scarlett Johansson was her.
I'm joking. Bianca is the doll.
Okay, well, you know what's hilarious is that Scarlett Johansson was the voice of the computer in Her.
Yes, I am aware of that. But yeah, so that was like a funny thing in the credits, like Bianca was played by Bianca Wrangler, apparently. But yeah, so with all of the info out of the way, what did you think of the film, T? And also, was this the first time you'd seen this?
So this is the first time I'd seen it. We used to run it all the time when I worked at MGM because it's an MGM movie. They used to show it all the time. Oh my god, I really like this movie. You did not tell me how much of a tearjerker it was.
Well, that's kind of the fun of this show, is I don't say anything because your reaction is what's fun.
I cried a lot. I texted my mom and said, "Oh my god, why am I crying over this doll? Why is this doll making me cry?" But I really like this movie. It was such a sweet movie. It's, despite her technically being a sex doll, it's a very wholesome movie.
Well, so I've mentioned this before. In high school, I was, I always had friends, usually women, recommending romance movies to me because I said it was my least favorite genre. And this was one that was recommended to me, and I really liked it. This is one of those movies that's been on the back burner for the show for a while. Once I knew we were kind of going to do romantic movies every February, it's like, okay, whenever. And again, it's kind of funny how it worked out, since both of our male protagonists in the films we're talking about this year kind of have issues. One is a barely functioning alcoholic, and then this guy is suffering from a delusion.
Yeah.
But I really liked it, and also what sold me on it as a teenager was someone basically said what the premise is. A guy falls in love with a sex doll, and I was like, that's hilarious, I'm going to watch this. And just like you, I was very surprised. And it is a comedy. But I was really
it doesn't
surprised.
Feel like I mean, I guess it is a comedy, but I'd say to dramedy.
A little bit. So it is funny, but not in the way you would expect. And the other thing that's so interesting, at the time I thought, what a wacky premise or something. It's kind of crazy that over a decade later, people marrying or having relationships with mannequins or sex dolls or anime body pillows are so normal on the internet. There's like a dude in Japan who also has like a real life like sex doll that he married. And like it's crazy. Obviously they are not.
I think it's called objectphilia.
Right. It's and that too. There's even before. Because when I saw this film as a teenager, I had not seen the reality TV of people who are having relationships with cars.
Oh my god! You mean like
rides.
Chase the convertible? Or the Corvette,
exactly.
Chase the Corvette.
But it's just interesting how that's kind of ballooned out. And also, at least with the sex doll people, it's a lot less wholesome. It is much more of a sad, desperate kind of thing. Because that's what really makes this so awesome, is that it is we always recommend you see the films, and I would hope that everyone who's listening has seen this film. But for just to catch everybody up, Lars is a guy who has some mental trauma, I should say. Like it's
major anxiety and depression.
Yeah, and he's also got something where he's very sensitive to touch. But he's such a nice guy, and he is very active. Again, like when you think of people marrying sex dolls, especially these days, it's like weird loner people.
Yeah.
He's not that guy. He is very wholesome. He's like a church boy. He has a job. He has friends. He has, people are always inviting him over, and because of like his anxiety or his agoraphobia or whatever it is, like he keeps to himself by choice. And the story, which I did not expect when I was a teenager, and rewatching this, I'm glad I rewatched this. I already knew I liked this movie, but it's better than I remember. Like the where I would call it kind of a romance, it's not really the romance between him and Bianca the doll. It's like this community that loves this guy so much that they're willing to pretend for his sake that this doll is a real person, and that melts my icy heart every time I see this movie.
Oh my god, when I saw all the stuff they did for him, I started crying because I was just like, this town is full of such good people. I love how at first they don't get it, but they're like, sure, we'll do it. But then I just love how it just seems so natural later on. They're like, oh, by the way, we're picking up Bianca for her, her shift or whatever here. And like, they're doing this of their own, the best part is it seems like they were actually not, necessarily like playing into the delusion. I guess they kind of were. But even when he wasn't there, they didn't just like leave her in a closet somewhere. They had her propped up, like if she was like if she was like at the school board meeting, she's sitting there behind the podium and all that sort of stuff, So the fact that they were treating her with such kindness, even though she wasn't a real human, was so heartwarming. And I actually
one detail that I forgot about that I got butterflies because it was so cute was when Bianca gets a job as a mannequin in the store window.
I know, I love that. Oh my god, I love that so much.
It's I'm so happy because I don't even think when I saw this I must have known because I'd been watching the Oscars. It's probably just been so many years that I forgot, but I'm so happy that it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay because that, like, the writing is so good, not just with, Lars, but with how just we always talk about, like, the main characters having character arcs, and they're definitely, I'd say for Lars as the protagonist, it's about him getting, we hear the therapist say like, oh, he has this delusion because he needs something from it, and the delusion will go away when he doesn't need it anymore, and that's kind of his character arc because
I love how
eventually Bianca
his
dies.
Character arc is subconscious, which is great.
Yes. But one thing that I do love is that every character in this film has a character arc, because it's all about kind of how the town reacts to him. And they all, from the get-go, they are supportive, but especially like his brother, the way the perfect example of his change in character is the beginning of the movie when he meets Bianca versus when Bianca dies. At the very beginning, it's like, oh my god, my brother's crazy. What are we going to do? He's going to be locked up in a hospital, and, he's trying to tell, like, Lars, she's a doll. She's not real. And Lars just ignores him and stuff. And from kind of, being vulnerable with his own feelings on how he feels like he abandoned his little brother, he becomes more emotionally intelligent with how he's feeling about everything, and seeing how he reacts to how Lars thinks that Bianca's dying, it's not the same. He's accepting of it, and he's like, oh yeah, we gotta call 911, or and then that too, the realization, because I think his wife Karen says we got to call 911, and then he grabs her. It's like 911. It's like, well,
She's like, I don't know. That's
it's
what you do in this situation,
right? And then it's like, obviously they don't show it, but it's like he probably called Dagmar to be like, yeah, Bianca's dying. Can you like alert the hospital so that they're not like confused when they pick up a doll or something?
Yeah.
But there's that. There's the arc with the girl who's crushing on him at his office. I think is Laurel, and
her name is Margot.
Okay, so that was Margot. So never mind. That was Kelly Garner. Never mind. But anywho, because there's also her kind of reaction to Lars, because she is like in love with Lars, and seeing her, shock that he has a girlfriend, to almost kind of like disgust is too hard of a word, but like she's like kind of jealous and then concerned when she sees that his girlfriend is a doll, and then befriending Bianca, and then also moving on and getting a boyfriend, and then coming to Lars when it doesn't work out. Like, every single character in this film has an arc kind of based on how their relationship with Lars changes over the course of his relationship with Bianca. And I also love how even his creepy coworker who's like looking at porn at work, I love how even he is nice to Lars. Like at the party, he's all like, "Oh yeah, man, Bianca's super banging, bro."
Yeah, I know.
In his own way, he's
yeah.
And that too. I also there's like one person who's mean to Lars, like, "Oh, what a creepy guy." And it's like, he's clearly not a part of the community. And I also love how Margot, gets him to fight with his girlfriend by, "Oh, I heard you guys are getting married," and then immediately they start arguing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the writing is really good, especially like this is almost an ensemble film, because obviously Ryan Gosling kind of steals the spotlight with his performance as Lars, but it's so great to just see kind of the change in the community. And also, even though they're supportive, but they're not accepting, like they're, by the end of the film, like with them kind of warming up to Bianca as a person, whatever, they change.
No, I'd actually say that it's about it's I'd say they kind of have warmed up to Bianca about halfway through the movie.
Yes.
Because we stopped focusing on them, and it's really interesting how first off, Ryan Gosling as Lars, he pulls this off great. He really comes across as this really awkward, shy, reclusive, because like I said, I only really I knew basically what you said. Guy falls in love with a sex doll. And so at first, when his sister-in-law comes out to get them at the very beginning to get breakfast, he's kind of like, she's calling out to him. He's like not getting up, and he comes over. Finally, he looks at the window. He's up in there. So at first, I thought this thing was going to be like, oh, like he's shy around women or something like that. And then it just turns out that he has all this unprocessed trauma from his childhood about blaming himself for his mother's death, and then the fact that she's pregnant creates a whole nother stress and burden for him. And even though you said something and I was going to respond to it, and I was basically going to say, it's Bianca is not he doesn't necessarily, I mean, on a surface level, he does get Bianca because he's lonely, but he also gets Bianca subconsciously because she becomes a way for him to communicate and to bond with people.
Yes. I would not say that. I don't think he was lonely. I don't think that was, because everybody was very he was a member of the community actively. It's again, this is so smartly written from like a mental health perspective.
Yeah.
It doesn't get into mumbo jumbo. It doesn't use a bunch of like buzzwords, or it's just, Dagmar puts it perfectly at the beginning of the film. His delusion is brought about because he needs something, or he needs to get over something, or he needs to process something. And when he has overcome whatever it is that he's dealing with, he will not need the delusion anymore, which is where he starts to believe that
So
Bianca is dying.
that was what raised some questions for me, because I agree with everything she's saying, but my thing is, what is the inciting event then?
Well,
What?
so
Why
one
now?
thing you know me, I like it when movies don't spell it out for you, and that's kind of the thing is, I think there are some concrete things in his life that you can kind of speculate on, right? So we know that his mother died in childbirth, giving birth to him.
Yeah.
So I think he might be, and this is speculation. Again, the movie does not come out and say this, but I think he is afraid of that happening to a woman. He's like, it's very clear, especially as the movie goes on, that he does have feelings for Margot. And maybe that's why he was kind of avoiding her. But it kind of begs the question, like, is he afraid that if he, gets married and has, a kid with someone that, like, he's afraid they're going to end up like his mom? And there's actually, like, a quote. I was watching this with my sister, and she brought up a quote, which hilariously was, like, a famous quote that was put up on IMDb when I was getting all the details, and it's oh yeah, these flowers are made of plastic, isn't that nice, they'll last forever. And it kind of makes you think maybe that's where he was going with Bianca, is like he didn't want the person he loved to be hurt or die.
Yeah.
And then there's other things too, with kind of, you get a little bit of an answer about their father was like a very awesome dude, but after his wife died, he became very reclusive and sad. And you kind of realize, oh, that's all Lars ever knew, because as soon as he was born, that's how his dad was. So he never saw him before his mother passed. And then there's the, with his brother, whose name is Paul, says later, about feeling guilty, like, my dad was so sad, and as soon as I could, I just wanted to get out of the house. And that really beautiful scene where he cries with Karen, where he's like, I left as soon as I could, and can you imagine what it must have been like for him to live here, and then for me to come home with you and have him move into the garage like the family dog. And it's just like, it's like his brother isn't like, at the beginning of the film he seems like a normal dude, but it's really touching to see that he had some emotional baggage he hadn't been addressing about their relationship, that this weird romance kind of brought out of him.
Yeah.
But that's, as I said, that's kind of the interesting thing. Like, I love that about this movie. It does not just spell out for you, oh, he's feeling this way because of this traumatic event. Like, it gives you clues about, like, Lars's upbringing and why he might be the way he is, but it doesn't just tell you, oh, he's manifesting this woman because of A, B, and C.
No, I know all that. I just want to know. I still haven't figured out yet what the inciting event was for him to get the doll now. Because when the story starts, she's already pregnant.
Right?
So it wasn't that.
Well, I think, because if you think about it, I'm trying to remember what they talked about at dinner. I think what the inciting incident would have been was that dinner that they force him to go to, where she tackles him. Because the very next scene is 6 weeks later. So that has to be something that happened at that dinner. And I'm trying to remember what they talked about at dinner.
Yeah, I can't remember what they talked about at dinner either. I know at one point,
but it has to be that.
I know he says he wants him to move in, and then I know that's said there, and he says no, and he's like, "Oh no, it's half your house too." He's like, "I know." There was that.
Maybe here's an idea, because I hadn't thought about it that way. So I don't know how many bedrooms there were in the house, but if there was only the one spare bedroom that used to be his mother's, maybe he didn't want to move into his mother's old bedroom, and maybe Bianca, because we can't have Bianca stay in the garage. Maybe that had part of it. Like, oh, well, I'd love to move in, but Bianca's here, and it'd be rude of me to have her live in the garage. She's in a wheelchair. Why doesn't she move into the house?
I'm thinking in the first office scene, which is when we find out about the doll, or that the doll can be made. Is Margot, is that like her first day or something, I don't know. I don't
I
think it is.
think that it's been an ongoing thing because after she fails to get his attention as Lars goes to get coffee, his creepy coworker like looks at Margot and it's like, your problem is you're coming on too strong. So I think it's been like an ongoing thing. I think she's just trying to break through his protective shell, and it's just the most recent attempt.
But I love how Bianca's his way of reaching out, because
Yes.
when he has Bianca, he's not reclusive anymore. Suddenly he wants to take her out. He wants to show her off. He wants to. So I feel like there's something we're missing, and which is good because it's so subtle that we can't pinpoint it. But it wasn't so bizarre that we were just like, well, where did this come from?
No. Well, and
Like
another
it felt like a
great
natural
scene-
progression.
Another great tear-jerking scene in the movie is when he's fighting with Bianca and he goes out to chop wood and Karen goes after him. And
Oh my
it's
God.
like, you know,
He's
and
like,
she's
no
like,
one
"What are you
cares."
talking- Everyone
And she's like,
loves you,
bitch,
Lars."
we all care.
But I think that is part of, again, like if you're trying to solve the riddle of like what inspired this delusion to come about, like that might be part of it. Is like it's very clear to us, the viewers, that despite him being kind of a weirdo, like everyone in this community really likes him, but it's totally possible that he didn't feel that way, you know? And him kind of realizing that everyone is, you know, bending, and her having to kind of yell at him, like, what do you mean we're bending over backwards just for Bianca because we love you,
But what
Lars?
makes that scene so great is not just that she snaps back and says, no, we're doing everything we can. She doesn't say, and she's not real, or something like that. She doesn't do anything to wound him. And that is what makes that scene so incredibly powerful.
Well, so one thing, I will say this is a comedy. There's different types of comedy. Obviously, it's all subjective and stuff. But one thing I was thinking of while watching this is, because it was funny, as I said, I was watching this with my sister, and there was plenty of points where we just bust out laughing. I think the thing is, it's not mean-spirited. You're not laughing at Lars. Like one of the points that we both laughed and was clearly, you know, there was a pause for laughter, both emotionally beat-wise and then also just, you know, for laughing, is when he is introducing his, you know, brother and sister-in-law to Bianca. Because it is comical the way, because you see her on the couch and he's like explaining where she came from, and then there is a hard cut to the two of them with just bewildered faces.
Yeah.
And it is funny. And again, like, you're not laughing at Lars, you're laughing at their response, because it's just like, oh my God, what do you even say to this? Like, because they're just blindsided. If you went into the movie blind, you probably would be blindsided too. It's like, but all of the comedy has to do with that. It's like, it's not mean-spirited comedy. The thing I was thinking of while watching this is just a few months ago we reviewed Welcome to the Dollhouse, which I think is a really funny movie. But that's funny in the sense that it is just very, very vulgar and very, like, shocking in how mean it is. Whereas this is, like, the opposite, you know? Like, it is,
The
humor is a comedy, and
the humor really comes from, you know, just, it's almost just like seeing this doll show up just in unexpected places. Like her at church. Like, he's sitting there and she's holding her hymnal. And, you know, this is really everybody's first time seeing it. And they're all just looking around like, what is going on? But again, we're not laughing at Lars. It's just like, it's almost like the absurdity of the situation. But not because we think he's, we like, we're not like, oh, what a loser. It's like, oh my God, could you imagine?
I actually made a joke while watching this where him and
when
Margot
they give
bowling.
him when they give him the basket, and you could tell they're still just like, they don't know what to make of it. So I forget what her name is. Well, she grabs it and runs it over. She's like, here, welcome, Bianca. And they're all just like, what are we supposed to do here? Like, this is our normal welcome basket thing, but like, what are we supposed to do? It's all great, but go on.
Well, with what you said about her showing up in unexpected places, I made a joke while watching this where it's like, so him and Margot are going bowling to help her feel better about her breakup. And as they're leaving, it like kind of, the shot sort of lingers on the two of them exiting the bowling alley. And I was just sort of like joking, like, what if Margot was there in the wheelchair, like holding a gun? And it's just,
oh my God, no, Bianca, if Bianca was there.
Sorry, Bianca was there. No, Bianca, calm down. It's not what you think.
Tone shift, it suddenly became a horror film.
Right? No, but like that, it kind of goes with the comedy of just her being everywhere and everything. But yeah, like I think that is it is a comedy. I would say that it is probably the strongest. Like if you were trying to like pinpoint just one genre, I do think it is a comedy, but not in the sense that like you're laughing at a crazy person. And that's the other thing too. Like I do think some movies they're very inaccurate to how psychology works, and some that are so accurate that they're kind of annoying because they're not really fun.
Hmm.
And I don't remember. Maybe you keep up with pop psychology a little more than I have since leaving college, but I'm pretty sure this is kind of accurate to how you deal with a delusion. Because you think of like the very movie esque, like, oh, I think I'm Napoleon Bonaparte or something, and it's kind of like, I mean, you really can't talk someone out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, the pop psychology thing has always been like, if you try to break them of the delusion too quickly or too forcefully, it pushes them farther back into their delusion.
Right, and that's where I'm not exactly sure, but I do think this is pretty accurate to how you would quote unquote treat a delusion, because I don't, as pop psychology esque as it is, like there's parts where it's very much a movie, like where the paramedics pick up Bianca and pretend she's a person to like placate Lars.
Yeah.
I would be, and my sister said it when it was happening, like, oh, this is a little ridiculous, and I kind of agree, but it's also a movie.
Yeah.
But
It's also
that
Wisconsin, so it's like the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. So I think
did
I
they
may
say
have
it
been
was
filmed in
Wisconsin?
Canada.
Because I forgot to mention it was actually filmed in Alton in Ontario, Canada. So technically it's Canada, but I didn't know if they said that it was Wisconsin or.
Because I looked up where does let me do it again. Lars
Where
and
did
the
it
Whale
take
Girl take place? Because I was trying to find something like maybe I could find a cocktail something based off of that. So it was filmed in like you said in Canada, but the film is set in the U.S. state of Wisconsin.
Okay, and that makes. I was wondering because there is a bit where I forgot what sport he was playing, but his brother, him and his coworkers played against. He called the cheese inspectors.
Yeah.
And I was thinking
Classic Wisconsin.
at first I thought he was talking about the Packers, and then I was like, well, wait a second. He said we lost, and he's also sweaty, so I guess he was like playing something.
Yeah.
Some sport.
Like I think it's basketball.
But, right, so I was thinking at first I was like, oh, it's got to be Wisconsin if he's talking about the cheese inspectors, but then they never full out say, because I was thinking of that too. I'm like, oh, if this takes place in Wisconsin, there's a ton of beers I could drink from Wisconsin, but they never specifically named it from what I remember from watching the movie.
Yeah.
So one other thing, I was talking about how the ensemble was really well acted. I mean, this is definitely one of Ryan Gosling's best roles, in my opinion. And I've got a little... So, I mentioned it in a recent episode. Maybe it was our finale or something, but there's... Every once in a while, there's like a quote-unquote like heartthrob actor who acts in some romance film when they're younger, and people kind of write them off as like not being a good actor. They're just a pretty boy or something. The most recent one I can think of is Robert Pattinson, because he was unfairly kind of thought of as like a hack because of the Twilight movies. And if you go as far back as Titanic, I remember when I was a little kid, that was kind of the understanding of Leo DiCaprio is like, oh yeah, he's cute, but he's not that good. And it's so funny, years later, he's acting in all these sorts of roles. He's very much changed the type of character he tends to play in movies. But Ryan Gosling is very much a victim of that in and of itself. But the interesting thing with me is I never really had an opinion about him, because I never saw The Notebook. And it was kind of one of those movies where, depending on who you ask, it was either a work of genius or it was really cheesy and schmaltzy and not worth your time.
Listen, Rachel McAdams gave us The Notebook and Mean Girls the same year. So, genius.
I can't believe that was... And that too. So this was like the movie he did, I think, right after The Notebook. But
Hmm.
so he, as I said, he had a reputation. I didn't have a dog in the fight because I didn't watch The Notebook, and I couldn't really. I never watched The Notebook until very recently, maybe like 7 years ago or
And
something.
wasn't it great?
Um, it's okay.
Oh my
I
god.
think. I think the thing that bothered me about The Notebook, speaking of movie psychology, is it just drove me crazy how I'm like, that's not how Alzheimer's works.
It's how romantic Alzheimer's works.
I know, but it irritated me. I was like, this is so very like, if it was not framed that way, if it was just all the stuff in the past, I thought that was fine. I
Yeah.
do think a lot. I get where some of the people who hated it. I think it's okay. I don't love it and I don't hate it. It's like right in the middle. It'd be like a 2.5 if I was giving it a rating.
I would agree with you.
Uh,
I do kind of, I kind of put it in the, I kind of feel the same way about it that I do with Assassin's Creed, which is hilarious comparison.
yeah,
But I kind of wish they would just stay in the past.
right.
I don't care
So
what's
that
happening in the
yeah,
future.
I think you're in good company with that. I'm pretty sure everyone who played that game feels that way. But yeah, so I didn't really have an opinion on Ryan Gosling, but what's funny is so I saw this movie I think the year it came out because I think it was around that time. I think I was either 16 or 17, so it might have been the year after, but I was like a teenager and it was around that time and I was like, "Wow, he's really good in this. I think he's a great actor." And then a few years later, he was in Drive, and I was just like, "Yeah, this dude's awesome. He's good at he's an excellent actor." And
Oh my
people are
god,
crazy.
do you know how tiny he is? I tried on his jacket from Drive because I interned at the company that produced it and they still had his jacket and I tried it on. Oh my god, that dude is small.
Makes sense. Tends to be the case with a lot of leading men. Same thing with like Tom Cruise and all that. But like going off of him being really good in this role, I think it's kind of this is people like I even used the term subtly at some point in this review, but I feel like that word gets thrown around without people understanding it. And there is so much subtlety and nuance to playing a character who is weird but not creepy,
Yeah.
and that's what he is. There's clearly something off about him, but he's not off-putting. Like this would be a great movie for incels to study because I was even thinking it's like, well, what is he doing that is not creepy, and I think but is weird, and I think like he blinks a lot. I think what keeps him from being creepy is that he smiles a
Well,
lot.
smiling can be creepy.
It can be,
I
but
will
it's
say he did look, his character design was very very similar to Stanley Tucci in The Lovely Bones, but
yes.
he doesn't look creepy in this. Stanley Tucci looked creepy in that, and
Well,
I really think
again,
that it's his
smiling.
mannerisms.
There's a difference between smiling and leering. You
That's
know,
also true.
because smiling, if you're doing it without any ill intent, you're not going to look creepy. And I think, and also he's very polite. He's very well mannered. He looks people in the eye. But again, it's funny with creepy dudes tend to tell women to smile more. And there's a grain of truth to you're more approachable if you smile more. I just and people have said it. People have said it to death. It's like they're not there to be attractive for you, but in the sense of like playing someone who comes off as friendly. Lars, he's smiling a lot, but not again. He's not leering. He's not because when you think of creepy people smiling, it's usually because they're undressing you with their eyes.
Right, right. No, I agree with what you're saying, but Ryan Gosling's though mannerisms that he pulled off with this was so great. Like I really until I saw because I didn't see Drive, but I've seen Ryan Gosling in limited segments until really Barbie. I kind of like you didn't really have an opinion of him. I'm like, yeah, he's just an actor. I know some people say really not in La La Land he was okay.
I'm
La
kind
La
of
Land.
surprised the Notebook didn't make you think he was really good.
Well, it's like I didn't realize that was him, because it was so long ago. To me, there's a difference between Ryan
What
Gosling
about
then and Ryan
crazy? What
Gosling
about
now.
Crazy Stupid Love?
I never saw Crazy Stupid Love.
Oh man,
Um,
you'd love it.
But he is so he said he gets the nuance and everything right in this. It's like he's weird without being creepy. You know, he's like sweet, and he's almost affectionate towards the town without being affectionate. It's so weird to describe this, but he's so good, and I love his little like nervous ticks that he would get. He got that down really well. You know, he was incredible in this, and you know, again, I don't remember what all was up that year for the Academy Awards, but I can't believe he didn't get a Best Actor nomination for this, because this was such an incredible performance.
Well, he wouldn't have to wait too much longer because he was nominated for Drive. He eventually, because he won for La La Land a few years ago. He's, as I said, it's the pretty boy curse, where you're in a romance movie when you're in your early 20s and everyone just writes you off. Other thing about his performance, just two kind of fun facts. He did a little bit of improv when they were entering the party, or like on their way to the party. That was all made up. None of that was scripted. And when he's talking to Margot about her breakup and he's taking the noose off of the teddy bear, the bit where he does the little CPR,
Yeah.
completely improv, not in the
See,
script.
but that was so. But see, do you see how like good that was and how much that built that character? Like those
Yeah.
that was such an adorable scene, considering, you know, like how, and that really helped show how much his character has grown from the beginning. You know, through Bianca as a proxy, he's developed. I was trying to figure out if he had like a specific diagnosis. I was reading on Reddit, and somebody said, you know, if you think about it, not only was he, you know, traumatized, but he had such low self esteem. Like if you think about the fact that he asked Bianca to marry him and she said no. Once again, that's all within his control, as the
As I
doctor
said,
says.
man, the beauty of not spelling out anything for people, that's what makes it fun to talk about movies, and that's why I hate it when movies do it. Over explain things. Explain what the monster is, explain what the curse is, explain what the mental illness is. Like, because another thing, too, kind of on that topic, is again, the movie doesn't spell it out, but you know that he probably did not have a lot of social interaction when he was growing up, because the father was like reclusive after his mother died.
Yeah.
So it could be, again, it doesn't say whether this is the case or not, but it could be that he doesn't have a lot of experience talking to people. And
You know
with
what's so
and
sad
in
about
fact,
that?
that even, I'm kind of like realizing I might be onto something, because so Bianca, he starts talking to people more, and what does he get mad at Bianca for doing? For spending too much time with other people. But I think part of it is also him being like overstimulated. Like he's not used to having so much people around. So he's saying that it's because she's not spending so much time with him, but really it's like he can't take it anymore. Like there's so much social interaction around him that he's feeling like, you know, I said overstimulated, but he's like burning out.
Right, right. Well, you know, but I didn't realize this until you kind of explained to me. I mean, like I knew I put two and two together while we were talking about this, and you kind of really explained it more about his father. Somebody online said his father was abusive. I don't think his father was abusive.
Not
Like,
maybe not intentionally.
but
You know,
and if it
people,
was,
whenever you say abusive, people always think of like some angry drunk like beating you up, and it's like you can be abusive without being like malicious. You know what
well,
I mean?
and maybe
Like because he could,
maybe they
yeah.
meant like by not being present. You know, that was a form of
Yeah,
emotional
well, I
abuse like
mean,
that.
the thing is, kids need, you know, they say this all the time, like, kids need to be, you know, you need to talk to them, like, reading to your kids at night. It's not just a bedtime story thing to shut them up. Like, it actually teaches them, you know, it teaches them a lot more than you realize, just mundane things you do with your kids. And again, we do not get like a vivid description of what his dad was like, but just kind of based on what his brother said and what, you know, Ryan Gosling sort of hinted at when he was talking to his brother. His father was, you know, he didn't probably interact with his son very much. He probably did not go out. He probably did not take his son out. And that is a form of abuse. You know, like again, everyone always thinks of like the most extreme example of like, oh, they when they weren't out on the town, their parents would like duct tape them to a chair, or so, and like obviously that's abusive. But you know, if you neglect kind of stimulating your child educationally, socially, emotionally, like that is a form of abuse, whether it's, you know, malicious or not. Like, and as the saying goes, hurt people, and usually
Yeah.
that's not like an intentional thing. So, you know, we don't really ever get a full picture of the father,
Well,
but I don't think that's necessarily off base to say he
well,
was abusive. It's just hard to tell.
well, like I said, I put two and two together sitting here, and this now makes sense to me. He was so starved for affection as a child that being hugged causes him physical pain. Like, that's very telling to me. You know, he was never really embraced as a child. And you know,
Yeah.
hugging is such a is such a second nature, like to me and to other people. But like that's like such a that's like mind blowing to me that's how little interaction that human touch is causes a burning sensation to him. And I think I think that's incredibly, you know, that's like an incredibly disturbing thing. But it really kind of makes this character, you, it really makes you sort of feel for his character and really understand why he's doing this thing with Bianca that he is. Because if you think about it, Bianca can't hug him. Bianca can't really touch him. Anything that happens touch wise, he's doing to her. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Do you know this? I'm mostly being cheeky with this, but you being true crime guy, let's see if you can think of who I'm like. Obviously, he's not the same person, but we've got a character in Wisconsin who is a little bit of, you know, social recluse, and
Wisconsin.
he's
Is
got
it, is
and
it
he's
Ed
got an
Gein?
issue with no, he's got an issue with physical touch and control. And because that with the person I'm thinking of, part of the reason he did what he did was that he didn't want his romantic partners to move at all, kind of like a doll.
Oh, Jeffrey Dahmer?
There we go.
Was Ed Gein
Obviously,
also in
I'm
Wisconsin?
yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I'm just being a
Oh my
bastard
god.
by even bringing him up in the same
Jeez.
sentence as Lars. But it is kind of funny, like when you think about it. It's like because Dahmer, like, you know, the dude was a monster. But what is interesting is some of the motivation for what he did was brought on by some very bizarre, like, psychological. It didn't, like, not just like, again, he would like often like kill people because he didn't want them to move.
There was
It's like,
somebody actually in the UK, and I forget what his name was. But he would literally have people over and then kill them just so he would have somebody to talk to and be there all the
bro, you
time.
know you can talk to them when they're alive, right, bro?
Well, I know, but then they leave. He
I
didn't
know.
want them
I'm
to
not.
leave.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the you know, the serial killer who's not present. Here's a fun question. You've seen Juno, right?
Unfortunately, yes, I did.
Wow. Unfortunately, interesting.
It was an angsty teen movie. It wasn't really my thing. And then
I'm
I
just
also
surprised because you were. I mean, you seemed excited for the new Diablo Cody movie, so I assumed you were a fan of her work.
I have not seen any of her work before.
You literally just said you've seen
Except
Juno.
except for Juno, because I didn't
Got
realize
it.
at the time that it was the same person. We had this whole discussion earlier about the Oscar winner, oh, and then Jennifer's Body. But
Well, so were you just excited for Lisa Frankenstein because
just
of the trailer? Like
yeah, the trailer just really hooked me. Something about it was just, I don't know. It was kind of like,
okay, so it had nothing to do with the writer. You were just
yeah.
excited. Okay, so here's a question: Juno won best original screenplay.
Okay.
Do you think do you think it was warranted? Do you think it should have won over this movie?
I want to say no. However, there is such a thing as the Juno effect.
Yeah.
So clearly it was written well enough to have real life repercussions. But if I'm just basing it on just a movie, I'd say this one's better. I feel like this one has a lot more like the depth and the psychology and all this sort of stuff that we're just unpacking, just sitting here talking. I don't think I could have a conversation this stimulating over Juno. I'm not saying Juno's not worthy of having a discussion
Yeah.
about. I'm just saying there's so many layers and layers to Lars and the real girl that I didn't even realize would be there. I would kind of say I would have given it to Lars and the real girl.
And that's fine. Juno,
What do you think?
I would be shocked if any of you listeners have not seen Juno. It's one of those things. So I really liked it when it came out. The school I was going to did a thing that year where all of the Oscar-nominated screenplays were available for us to read months before. So I read Juno before I saw the movie, which was interesting because it was like you get kind of a picture in your head what the movie's going to be like, and then when you see it, it's like different. I liked it when it came out, but it kind of did this thing where every movie after it had to be this quirky indie movie. We sort of ranted about it back when we did 500 Days of Summer.
Yeah,
every movie. But here's the thing, do you know anything about Diablo, Cody?
I don't, except that she wrote Jennifer's Body, she wrote Juno, and she wrote Lisa Frankenstein.
She's interesting, man. So before writing Juno, she was a stripper.
Okay.
And she wrote it. It got picked up. It was sort of like a Cinderella story. And as I said, it was like she's, if you've seen pictures of her, she is a very quirky looking lady. She looks kind of like a Tim Burton character, but not in a. She's really cool. Also, I'd recommend reading interviews with her. I think she came up with a very quirky movie, just based on her own imagination, and everybody copied the hell out of her to the point where everything that felt really unique about Juno became something to hate about Juno.
Yeah,
and I watched it. I watched it. I want to say it was 2018 or 2019 the last time I saw it. A girl I was dating wanted, it was one of her movies she hadn't seen in a while, and I was like, yeah, it's been a decade or something since I've seen Juno, and I liked it when it came out. I just kind of got sick of it because of the hype at the time. And rewatching it, if you ignore all of the stupid, crap that was very 2008, 2007 at the time, the indie music, he eats Hot Pockets and he wears a cute runner's outfit and blah, 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 and I like all these bands no one's ever heard of, and blah, if you ignore that, the content of the story is really good. I'd recommend rewatching it. One thing that really hit different as an adult versus a 16-year-old was, when the guy is kind of developing romantic feelings for Juno, I, as a kid, was kind of I understood the sort of loss of his youth kind of thing, but I was just sort of more put off by the fact he was cheating on his wife. Watching it as a 28-year-old, the last time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, he's trying to get with a teenager. You know what I mean?
It didn't age well.
If you can, the quirkiness didn't age well. I think the story aged really well. I think, as I said, if you haven't seen it in a while, I'd rewatch it, because if you just filter out all of the quirky, not like other girls crap in the movie, I think it ages really well. And I don't think that it's super fair to dog on Diablo Cody for any of that, because technically she was the trendsetter. Every movie after Juno was copying Juno, and I mean, she's this wacky stripper who wrote movies on the side, everything she was doing kind of felt like it really came from her brain. And then again, after Juno won, she was sort of unfairly pigeonholed as she's just gonna write Juno movies, and she was really into B horror movies, and when she started doing that, the movies bombed because everyone was going to see them because she was the writer of Juno. And it's unfair. And I was one of those people when Jennifer's Body came out. I didn't even see it, but I was just like, oh, this is what she's doing now, and I didn't realize the genre that she was tapping into, and it was unfair. I'm glad Diablo Cody's back, and we treated her unfairly. And that's kind of an interesting thing, right? Is going back to old Oscars. I say this to anyone who gets offended every year. I'm like, literally pick a year and look at the winners versus the losers, and you will get something to be mad about. Like Juno, like that whole category was really interesting too. Juno in this film, The Savages, I remember a bunch of people were raving about, and I started reading that screenplay and got bored. So, and I'm trying to remember what the other, and I remember No Country for Old Men won Best Picture. It won Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah, but that really should have gone to There Will Be Blood.
That's surprising coming from you. I would have thought you wouldn't have liked either of those movies. But yeah,
I didn't like either of those movies, but one of them's clearly the better.
Well, anyway, yeah. So, what would you?
I'm coming at you with hot takes every 3 seconds. Here I am, come at me.
We got hot takes, we got cold takes, but they're all on the rocks. But what would you rate the Lars and the Real Girl, T?
I'm very, very tempted to give it 4 out of 4 pictures of sweet tea. You know what? I think I am going to give it 4 out of 4 pictures of sweet tea. Because, not just the fact that I liked it, but the fact that I think it is very well written. I thought it was very well casted, very well acted. I thought the emotional resonance is really good in here, but it never comes across as manipulative, or even though will classify this sort of as a tearjerker, that's not what it was made to be. I'm just empathetic. And I feel like empathetic people will kind of get the same sort of feelings I do, but that's not what it's setting out to do. And I just think the story is it's just a really sweet, and very wholesome story. And I wanted to say this earlier, but I want to say this now. This is, to me, like a perfect Valentine's movie, because, and I've said this before, people get all weird around Valentine's Day because they're single. People call it Singles Awareness Day. It's like, yes, parts of Valentine's Day revolve around couples because Valentine's Day is about love. But to me, Valentine's Day is a celebration of love, of the power of love and kindness and what it can do for our world. And if you look at this movie and you look at how much this town loves and cares for everybody within it, and how much this family loves and cares for each other, and how much Lars loves and cares for Bianca, that's really, I think, to me, what Valentine's Day is about. And that's why I really think this is a perfect Valentine's Day movie, because it really exemplifies everything that I believe Valentine's Day stands for.
Wow.
Follow that.
Wow. All right, well, I'm giving it 3.5, just because of my principles of it needs to be really amazing for me to give it a perfect. It's not going to wow you as far as like the technical stuff, but the comedic timing's perfect. The acting from everybody involved is great. The writing is fantastic. It's not as dated as Juno. Well, I say dated, it doesn't feel stuck in its time. Like, as I said, when we were talking about Juno, there's a bunch of stuff in that movie that you're just going to associate with the late 2000s. This movie feels like it could have come out this year. And the only thing that would have made it feel weird is the fact that no one has an iPhone. Or, technologically it stands out, but that's the only weird, thing where you'd be like, oh, this came out in 2007. It's a shame that it bombed, but if you, for some reason, listen to this whole thing and you have not seen the film and we spoiled the hell out of it, but you want to see it, it's on a bunch of free stuff. I watched it on Tubi, had to watch ads, but whatever.
Same.
It's on Tubi. Oh wait, no, I didn't watch it on Tubi. I watched it on Roku, so it's on both of those. It's on Amazon to rent, as well as a bunch of other things. I think it's underrated. I think that it has aged a lot better than Juno. I do, again, at the time, I do think it was kind of still warranted that Juno would win, but I think the most sad thing is, like, we've brought it up we've talked about so many movies that are really good that no one saw. If you have not seen this movie, check it out. I think it deserves some love. I think that's also like a tragedy with MGM, is they have been treading water forever. And, ever since their, old CEO sold off a bunch of their stuff. And
that was the dumbest move ever. I don't know why he
There
did
are
that.
so many movies by MGM that are, thankfully there's some that are like, for instance, it was Orion, but, Silence of the Lambs was technically, MGM adjacent. Because of that, there's Fargo, which the series is incredible. But it's just sad when they actually put out something legitimately fantastic and still no one went to see it. So, highly recommend this. As I said, almost perfect for me. But have you seen it, and do you disagree? What do you think about Juno? If you're listening to this on YouTube, let us know down in the comments, or tell us something you'd like us to talk about. If this is your first time listening to the show, we are on everything. We've got a whole backlog of episodes, all sorts of genres and topics and whatnot. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. I've been Whiskey.
I've been Sweet Tea.
Caping it, Kino.
And Suck It, Scorsese. Also, Whiskey's available to be your intimacy coordinator.
What did you think, Estefania?
Oh.
Talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Bye. Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and features original artwork by Asa Esparza and original music by Pat Mars. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.